Oh yeah, we do a podcast. Welcome back. It's the Bucket Bros.
We're
We've been
back,
gone for a
baby.
while. I don't know where my basketball is. I think it's already off and gone. How are you
Did one
doing,
of your dogs
Valley?
eat it?
Anything?
I'm okay.
Probably.
I'm okay. Let's see. I've recovered from the flu. Have you recovered from the flu yet?
I think I'm just about over it. Yeah, that was a doozy. That took me out for about a week. Yeah.
Yeah, you
Any
told me it
other
couldn't spread to the
eventful?
microphone, but I think it did. Let's see. I guess my household got 33% larger.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. Congrats.
thank you.
A new little girl has joined the family.
Yes,
And
indeed. Trying to learn that one. Trying to figure that one out.
yeah, and I've been all over the
Although,
Midwest. So yeah, it's been
it,
a crazy couple of weeks. We had our own little all-star break.
yeah, ours lasted
We're
a
back.
little bit longer though.
Yeah, it's probably what the NBA players want too, like three
I'm
weeks
actually I'm
off. And
actually deconditioned at this time. I've I've taken so much time off that it would be dangerous for me to return.
yeah, well, we're back. We're here. Like we've mentioned, or I mentioned to you earlier, it's with all of this going on. It's like thankfully, the Timberwolves color commentators have filled me in on the last few games, so at least I feel like I'm updated, at least on the Timberwolves side. And obviously, we've got a lot to talk about. There's been a lot going on in the NBA. I think we had maybe two episodes post the Luka trade, and then we really didn't like. I think AD got hurt, and then we did one episode, and then we kind of went away. So I think the Lakers have played 11 or 12 games with the new lineup, and what are your thoughts and takeaways from that so far?
Well, I mean, everybody knows that the Lakers have been hot, hot, hot. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but they are currently still number two in the West right now. I mean, a healthy portion behind OKC, but boy, have they been on a run. I mean, since around the time AD went down for them pre Luca trade, and then since then they've had the best defensive rating in the league, which
Nuts.
I mean, if you go back to I think the last time we did record, I mean, I, like many other people, just straight off the bat saying, where's their defense? Let's not worry about this year. I think, this is really more of a future move, which is kind of weird on LeBron's timeline. But boy, proving us wrong, proving the world wrong right now, stopping, well, everybody.
Yeah, no, it's been, I think, one of the best lines because I keep seeing the highlight passes of Luca throwing it down court. It's like LeBron mentioned too, like Luca's a natural quarterback and I'm a natural wide receiver. So this has kind of worked out the way that they've been throwing the ball up and down the court, which has been fun to watch. And yeah, it's to me, it's been, I've only seen clips. I haven't actually, this is full disclosure, I haven't actually sat and watched a full Laker game with the two of them on the team together yet. So I will have to get into this week by the time we do another episode because I've only seen just like barrages of highlight clips. And we were mentioned earlier, you to me, I get so much more when I actually sit and listen to the local commentators because they know the team. And so yeah, I think that would be beneficial to kind of hear how that the chemistry and everything's working for that team. But it seems to be working. It seems to be working pretty good. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you haven't been watching, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like the way in which players sort of just fling the ball around when they're not taking the game seriously during All Star game is kind of the way Luka and LeBron play at their best. So it's a little Harlem Globetrotters out there for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of starting to see Luka normalize a little bit, come into his
Yeah.
own in a Lakers uniform, which is good. I mean, he is truly gained his confidence back, as evidenced by how much he's complaining to the refs while the rest of his team runs down the court. I dropped my ball here.
Yeah.
So yeah, he is truly a Laker at this point. Oh man, I guess I gotta find another one. That's all right.
Yeah. No,
Also, very important,
he's
right?
yeah. No, and the thing is like with him, obviously the way the trade went down, the way Dallas was all of a sudden kind of bashing him and talking about his hookah and his drinking and being out of shape, but then like you're an idiot for the fact that you sent him to probably the best 40-year-old ever in the moment right now, and how to take care of his body and kind of give him that leadership to be like, hey, Luka, this is what you do if you want to stay healthy and play plenty of games and take advantage of what you got. Because man, yeah, I've got here, and I might not be up to date, but they're 9-3 since he started, 8-2 in the last 10, and yes, 40-22, and they're looking legit. So it's pretty impressive. He's putting up kind of his usual numbers, I want to say, probably a little bit better than what he was doing in Dallas, 23, 8-8 so far. And
I would definitely say that that's less than his. I would say that's less than Dallas, but sharing the ball a little bit, still trying to get his feel for this new team. I'd say he's doing all right. And a lot of those early games were lower scoring. He has since, as I said, come into his own. And it's funny, you can't even really blame this on like strength of schedule for LA. I would say 50-50. Some of the games have been cupcakes for them, but along the way they've had to beat, let's see, they've beat Memphis, they've beat Golden State recently. Hold on, I'm on the wrong part of the schedule. No wonder that this is. There we go. There they beat the Clippers twice. They beat Minnesota. They beat perhaps a week in Dallas, but they had that big win over Denver where they held Nikola Jokic to 7 shots. Ended up having a convincing win coming down in the fourth quarter there. They beat the Knicks again. There's some wins in there. There's even some L's in there that are a little bit concerning, but there's been some wins in there that are against teams that we don't expect to make the playoffs. But it's not like, you're going to play who's ever in front of you, and they're taking advantage of the situation. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Do you think they got exposed last night by the Celtics? I think that obviously the Celtics are defending champs and still a great team, but I think were they able to poke some holes into kind of the dominance that they've shown recently?
So I'm glad that you brought that up. That's sort of like the period at the end of the sentence right now, because it's after that loss, it's gonna be interesting seeing what they look like moving forward, especially against some of these tougher teams. They face Denver again on Friday the 14th, and then again on the 19th, and then they end up playing OKC 2 games in April. Ooh, that'll be rough, on the 6th and the 8th to help close their season. So. But against Boston in particular, early in the game, they came out really hot, started taking control early. Boston was looking a little bit maybe lazy on some of their switches. Again, it was Harlem Globetrotter ball out there. The ball was just flinging around all over the place, looked awesome. But then, once they tightened down, once they themselves got into playoff mindset, which happened before the end of the first quarter, you kind of really saw Boston take control and not really lose a grip on that game for the rest of the game. Now, the Lakers did get close in the fourth quarter. They made another run, but again, unless the Lakers were hot, they weren't getting close to Boston, and they weren't taking a lead. One thing that you'll see with Jaylen Brown going up against Luka in that matchup reminded you a lot of what it looked like last year in the finals. I really feel like he's kind of like the anti-Luka. I guess you could say there's definitely plenty of highlights out there that would suggest Tatum's kind of the same, but Jaylen Brown out there, on both ends of the court, you can tell that he gives Luka a lot of trouble getting to his spots when he's playing defense on him, and then on the other end, he just blows right by the guy. Physically, he's sort of the anti-Luka. So. That was one thing that really stood out to me. I would say, down the stretch, the Lakers, they kept trying to take advantage of whoever they could. They were targeting Al Horford, which, historically, he's old now, but historically, Al Horford's not necessarily a guy that you would plan to target in the past. But he was holding his own. He was doing great. He was holding the line on a lot of these guys. There's some highlights, where he gets scored on, but when you have that many opportunities, you're going to see some opposing possessions. But overall, I think he even especially looked great one-on-one on LeBron, which I thought was impressive.
Slightly, I'm going to jump in slightly off topic, and it was not particularly this game, but I think like 2 before. and we'll get back to the Lakers, but I just had it popped in my head. The fact that we had the first ever 40-point teammates by the Lakers, and it wasn't Kevin McHale and Larry Bird. It wasn't Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. It was Peyton Pritchard and Derek White Jr. were the first Celtics to ever score 40 points in a game together, which that is kind of mind blowing, and we got to give them props. So, but back to the Lakers.
Oh yeah, no, they couldn't miss that game. I would have to pull up the box score to tell you, but like they had to combine like 18, 19 threes between the two of them,
yeah,
something ridiculous like that.
It's nuts.
No, hats off.
But back to the Lakers, I think one of the things, and maybe it like you mentioned, the Celtics were kind of able to key in on it. The way that LeBron and Luka, their pace of play is so similar that I think with some teams it's an advantage, but to other teams that can kind of key in on their slow movement or kind of the way that they space the ball. Do you think that the pace that these two play at, they're both kind of like Luka is a great decelerator, and LeBron just always knows he's very shifty and doesn't usually play with a lot of speed. So do you think that that's something that maybe the Lakers need to be aware of and not get taken advantage of?
Well, I mean, you said it yourself earlier. You know, Luka's a natural quarterback, and LeBron's a natural wide receiver. I feel like in transition, they've definitely been able to play off of each other very, very well.
But what about in the half court?
That's true. So half court offense, obviously, they're both rather brilliant. I would give the edge to Luka there. I feel like he's got a few more tools in his a few more. Yeah, he's got a few more moves in his toolbox there. But that, you know, the way this team is built currently, and I think what could make them work, they gotta defensively, they kind of gotta play like a little bit of a small ball and rely on a lot of like energy from, you know, Vanderbilt and Dorian Finney-Smith. But on the other end, you know, it's a lot of like just absorbing double teams and then get that ball movement going, and then somebody's going to be open. But when they go up against a team like Boston, so like I was alluding to with the finals from last year, they didn't have to double Luka, which is something that almost no other team can say. You know, that they're able to game plan when they're going up against Luka Doncic's team. So again, there was a couple hot runs there by the Lakers, but other than that, you saw them taking a one-on-one, and it was enough. It really was enough, and they were able to do the same thing against LeBron. Now, granted, it's 40-year-old LeBron, not 25-year-old LeBron, 26-year-old LeBron.
Hey, he's playing above his MVP level from 2012. So this 40-year-old LeBron to me it's kind of thrown out the window, because if he's playing better than like 26-year-old LeBron, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. And a lot of people have said that's kind of not just he's been leading by example and getting a lot of the younger guys to buy in by showing them that, like, I'm going to play with this level of effort, so I need you guys to get on my level, and it's working. Now, granted, when you look at some of the games that they've won, I don't think that they can rely on a guy like Vanderbilt giving as much effort as he has, where I feel like some possessions he's like guarding all five guys on the court. I don't know that that's going to work for the rest of the season, let alone 16 playoff games. But they are looking a little bit scary if they keep this up. We'll see. We'll see how the remaining, was it like 15 or 20 games for them go. But yeah, I don't know. I'm pleasantly surprised. But anyway, going back to what your question was, the half-court offense. So we know that Boston can do it, right? We know that Boston can pick them apart and sort of expose them, which is something that they do with every team that they face. Similarly, if they do end up facing OKC in the playoffs, I feel like that would be the other team that would be able to have that same type of advantage over them. They're not going to beat OKC on the height game. They're not going to beat OKC on the youth game. They're not going to beat them on the athleticism game. They're not going to beat them in the 3-point game. So, and if these guys can take Luka and or LeBron one-on-one on defense, it's not going to look good for them. I guess the real question is, what other team? I've just mentioned two of the top 3 teams in the NBA. It's like, well, that's kind of like a no-doubt statement. But who else, out west could potentially give the Lakers a really hard time? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Otherwise, I could just keep rambling. I could keep rambling, brother.
Well, no, obviously, I think there are some teams, but to me, there's still a lot of the season left. When I'm just writing down here, the Lakers starting on what is this, March 13th? So starting this Thursday, they have 8 games in 10 days. Like, I don't think I've ever seen. It's like triple back-to-backs, and then there's 2 games in 3 days. So I think they have a really tough stretch to kind of see what this team is made of, and they're not slouch games like you mentioned. It's the Nuggets, a couple of Nuggets games. I take it back. So there's not. They have a mix of games. They got some Suns and Spurs and 2 games with the Bucks. So it'll be curious to kind of see them, what they can do as far as staying on top of the West. But I think obviously I'm a big fan of the Warriors, kind of what they've done and kind of put together. I think they could have a chance to. I don't know how well they would match up, just because they're another small team, so they might be even smaller than the Lakers. So I don't know how well that matchup would go, but they're another hot team, and obviously Oklahoma City and Denver, and I think we need to see how they play against OKC and Denver. Obviously, they had that great game against Jokic and were able to manage it, much to JJ Redick's sleep, since he didn't get to sleep before that game because he was so worried about the matchups and trying to figure everything out. So, but that shows you his passion in trying to figure out how to take care of this team. But I think they're a legitimate contender. To me, the way that they're set up, and it's obviously, like we've mentioned when we were talking before, rim protection is going to be a big thing. It's how much is Jackson Hayes going to be able to kind of contribute and be some sort of a post presence and take care of somewhat of the paint. But I like their chances. I'm still probably going to lean Oklahoma, and I don't want to say, I think everybody else, I think they probably have a good shot. Denver is one of those. Denver and I want to say the Warriors again, but I don't know. Like, you got the Rockets and some of these other teams that they end up with a difficult matchup.
I think you just mentioned the other team that, at least physically on paper, they would have a hard time against the Rockets. They're another like young, athletic, switchable team.
And so, but the Grizzlies, to me, I think they've handled the Timberwolves in most of their games, and Luka's a T-Wolf killer. And outside of that, like the rest of the West, I would say no. But to me, it'll be a fun. We got 20 more games left of the season, which is nuts to think about. That we started like 2 months before the season with this whole podcast, and now we're coming down to the end of the season. So, but yeah, to me, I think there's a decent shot there. We might see LeBron take the crown off and put it on Luka and then walk away if they win. So who knows?
You think Western Conference Finals appearance? Are you calling Western Conference Finals appearance for LA? I imagine their opponent would be OKC, assuming that, depending on what the standings are, come close end of season.
It's hard to say, like, this new team that's only been around for 2 weeks to be able to gel and go through a tough Western Conference playoff run. I feel that's kind of the bar, though. I think that's the expectation now with the way they've been playing. Like, if they don't do that, is the season a failure? Even though, like you mentioned last time, like, this is maybe not this year, but I think we're 2 weeks in, and now it's like, no, this team has what it takes. Like, if they can stay healthy, I think that's going to be the big thing, because it's like LeBron's 40 and Luka has had his injury issues. Is it something that he can kind of do the same run that he did last year and make it to the finals again? So I think I'll say yes. Yes, I think they can get a Western Conference final.
They're certainly making it look like there's a chance, which I didn't think that there was at all.
Saying there's a chance.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're saying there's a chance. Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, yeah, I think I would still be a little bit surprised if it was truly LA OKC in the Western Conference Finals, but it's certainly looking possible. And then, anyway, going down the line, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on the Lakers, but going down the line, you did mention another team that has been hot with three T's lately, the the Golden State Warriors. They traded for Jimmy Butler, which seemed above neutral. You know, it was a little tennis clap after golf clap rather after that one. Wasn't looking so bad, but they've lost one game with him in the lineup, and yeah, they've been on a tear. Much like in the past couple months, the Lakers have had the best defensive rating in the league. The Warriors, since acquiring Jimmy, have had the fourth highest offensive rating and second defensive rating in the league, give or take, top five anyway, in both regards, which is insane considering that they were not quite right, not quite there pre Jimmy Butler. Yeah, they're looking like a different squad. Jimmy,
Yeah.
obviously, we know he's going to bring a certain level of intensity. He's going to bring defensive versatility. But watching them and actually seeing it play out, his instincts are incredible. Watching him cut with Draymond as a passer has been a big plus for them. I haven't seen him quite come into form with all of his game offensively, but he does bring a bit of a scoring punch, and he does it in a way that the Warriors didn't really have on their roster altogether. He finishes near and at the rim well, which I mean, how many? We're still waiting for him to come back from injury, but how many shots have we seen Kuminga just generate for himself and then look like he forgot how to shoot the ball halfway up in his form? So it's kind of like having that guy. Obviously he gets to the free throw line very, very well. He's a very patient player, really good on hesitation, really good on reading guys who he's going one-on-one against. And then I feel like with that presence, he's sort of just reawakened some of these other guys. I thought for sure that the stuff that we were seeing, for the first half of the season was just kind of the new Steph Curry. And, that wouldn't be a big surprise. What is he, 36 now? 37. He's an aging player. He's a smaller player. A lot of his game is predicated on his motor, his ability to his stamina, ability to just run the entire game. So what if he becomes instead of a near 30 point per game scorer or a low 20 point per game scorer with similar efficiency? That's kind of expected, right? But no, we have seen him, his energy level just absolutely explode since acquiring Jimmy. And I would say for sure the Warriors, one thing that's been on their side is strength of schedule. They haven't had a lot of tough matchups with their new lineup. But yeah, they are now sitting sixth, finally back in true playoff contention, just outside. Oh, did that change as of some of the games earlier today?
The Wolves just won, so I think they're tied. I'm trying to see if this refreshes. It may. Nope, it still has them at 6, and that's
yeah. The Wolves
points. 200
the Wolves
percentage points.
The Wolves are still down on them, one in the loss column. So,
but we're up one in the win column.
Yeah. So, certainly as the number of games played even out, that we'll see how that plays out. But I mean, that's another team we'll have to talk about pretty soon here.
Yeah, no, Jimmy's a difference maker when he wants to be. He's a leader. I think that's kind of one of the things. I saw a clip of Draymond talking about just the intensity level that he's brought to the team, which has forced everybody else to play more intensely. And that's the thing. If you're going to replace Andrew Wiggins with a Jimmy Butler, Andrew Wiggins is a great player, but he's very quiet, kind of unassuming, doesn't really want to be in the spotlight kind of a player, which is fine. It's just that's who he is. Where Jimmy he wants to be the focal point. I think he also takes some of that offensive responsibility away from Steph. Like he's the same way. Like he's not who he was before. So he might be a high teens, low 20 points per game. But I think that at least helps alleviate some of the pressure on Steph if he gets double teamed and just is that reliable veteran presence that's there, that's going to make the smart pass, that's going to play gritty defense. And when you have him and Draymond on the team at the same time, I think that's just, it's going to force the other team into making more mistakes, and it just gives you a better opportunity. But yeah, it's, to me, it's been fun to see just him in another space. Obviously, he kind of is bounced around, and always kind of brings that spark at the beginning, like when the Heat go to the finals kind of deal. So I think this is the year for the Warriors to kind of jump on that opportunity with a happy Jimmy who's like intent on like proving the Heat wrong in this season, to say, oh, this is why you should have paid me kind of deal. So I think that that kind of fire in him is what's definitely benefiting the Warriors, and hopefully it extends through for another 35 games, and we can kind of see what the Warriors can do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, let's see. I'm trying to. I'm. This is bad radio here, but I'm trying to pull up what their schedule's going to look like moving forward. We can scratch that. I can. I will say, when it comes to buying or selling, for the rest of the season going into the playoffs, do I think that the Warriors are going to be perhaps a legit playoff team? Do I expect them to win multiple playoff series? Do I expect them to be a legit contender? I do have some pause with that. Some of my qualms with them come with obviously their size. You mentioned, they just really do not have a true rim protector. They in one of the losses that they had recently that Jimmy Buckets did not play in, Quentin Grimes, like, of the 76ers, the 76ers beat the Warriors. You don't really sound like a playoff team if this rendition of the 76ers is beating you. But yeah, he dropped his career high, 44 points. And if you look at that shot chart, he was certainly hitting his threes that night, but a lot of those buckets came real close to the rim. So there's going to be some questions there, whether or not they can match up like a team against like the Lakers. I mean, that might be favorable for them. It depends how well that they're able to exploit mismatch.
The schedule doesn't look difficult. Like, I think they played Denver twice and the Lakers once, but you got Toronto, you've got Sacramento, the Spurs, Clippers, Pelicans. So
yeah,
there's opportunity for them to make up some ground.
Yeah, I do think that they're one of the teams who had like a much tougher schedule for the first portion of the season, which of course Wolves, which could be contributing to their win-loss record. But I mean, one issue that they had before the Jimmy trade that they still have is, they did take in one sturdy offensive player, granted not much of a shooter, but offensively they're still a little bit weak. Like if Steph's not there for you that night, like where else are the points coming from? Guys like Buddy Hield is just a little bit too unreliable. I mean, the Orlando Magic, who have been, oh boy, I want to hear what you have to say here, but.
Well, it's just funny because we started the season as Buddy Hield being like the number 2 scorer, and it's, to me, it's like all of a sudden all of the Buddy Hield like haters started coming out like, oh, this is what he does. Like, he comes out firing, and then all of a sudden he's a defensive liability, and he's not making his shots. Like, he goes streaky. But yeah, it's like I almost forgot that he was on the team, just because it's like he is such a roller coaster of a player. And every time that I've watched a Warrior game, I think he's ended up with like under 10 points. And I'm like, I keep waiting for him to have like one of these bigger games. And it's like, man, I wish he was the player that was in the first quarter of the season, because he was lighting it up.
Well, he definitely lives or dies by the. No. I mean, that's a good point. He definitely lives or dies by the 3-pointer. I mean, there's one game in particular recently where they were playing the Orlando Magic, who have been on quite the skid lately, in spite of Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero being back. That's a whole nother topic for another day. But Curry dropped his season high 56 against them. Really lit it up that night. And I mean, their next best offensive player was Quentin Post. I mean, obviously he's a good shooter, but I mean, if that's who you're relying on, in a playoff setting, it's really not going to work. You can't have that many guys go up for a dud that night and expect not to get blown out. I honestly, so it does make me a little bit nervous, but we'll see. Maybe they can create a little bit more chemistry for themselves before the end of the season. Maybe that them getting high enough up in the standings, if they're, again, even if their schedule's easier, you're going to play the teams who are in front of you. There's really nothing you can do about that. If they rack up a bunch of wins doing that, good for them. Then they deserve the higher seed. That's just kind of how it goes.
And the
But
one
yeah,
thing I do want to mention is that Jimmy definitely, like we mentioned, being a veteran presence, he's actually helped their turnovers. Like they were 12th in turnovers, and now they're down to like 6. And the other thing too has been when Curry's off the floor, they were getting outscored with 2.9 points per 100 possessions, and now they're outscoring by 5.2. So he's definitely, when the scorer is off the court, like they still have the ability to put the ball in the hoop, which is key. Versus, like you mentioned, if we're trying to depend on Kuminga and Healed, and I don't want to say the name because I'm going to mess it up and put it money in the jar. Pods, and it's like they can't rely on them to be the offensive threat, and that's what Jimmy brings. Like, and you mentioned too, he scores at the rim, and that's a high efficiency shot. Granted, it's not a 3, but he loves to get into the paint, get to the line, and whether he's getting layups or whatnot, those are efficient, smart baskets that help the team continue when Curry's not on the court.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as a guy who's loved Steph Curry for over a decade now, emotionally, I wouldn't mind watching them make another run. But there's a lot of good teams out west, so I could go down the line here and start firing off a lot of different squads who I feel like would give the Warriors trouble. We'll see if they can hang on to one of these top 6 spots. I'm favoring yes at this point because I'm looking at, other than the T-Wolves, I'm looking at who's in like playoff or play-in contention, and I think absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at maybe the Rockets if they continue to slide. Otherwise, the Warriors are really going to have to be fighting for that 6th spot. I think that's what's going to make it tough. Is they're like really going to have to be fighting for that to hold on to that 6th spot. Maybe they can steal. Maybe they can steal it from the Rockets, the number 5 spot from the Rockets. But otherwise, yeah, all those playing teams are really coming for them. So it could be tough. But yeah, I mean, speaking of the T-Wolves, yeah, they've been pretty hot lately too. Let's see, they just are. Let's see, are they're actively playing? They're actively playing, or did they just finished and won their 5th straight
141,
game?
124 win over the Spurs. And yeah, to me, it's been a full team the way that they've been playing. They like right after the last couple podcasts, they started. Chris Finch finally decided to unlock his bench, and instead of playing with like the 7-8 man rotation that he was like so stingent with, that I think a lot of T-Wolves fans and just a lot of NBA fans were just confused by. Like, you've got a great bench, like let's use some of these younger guys. And so with Edwards being suspended, getting his league leading 16th technical foul, and ended up, I think that was like in the 3rd quarter of that game. But Terrence Shannon Jr. had his career high of like 19 points one game and then 23 the next game. And Jalen Clark has been just one of those great players off the bench that brings energy, been hitting threes. And Dillingham has been getting more minutes, so it's fun. Like I mentioned just before we came on, I'm like, this is the fun squad. We got Luka Garza, Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., Jalen Clark, and Alexander Walker on the court. Like, and this is the garbage time team, but they're full of energy and fun to watch. But getting guys healthy, DiVincenzo coming back off of injury, Randall coming back, Gobert coming back, and him having like 4 dunks, to me, like that's the kind of play that we want to see from Rudy. Like, don't take any shots outside of 5 feet. Like, if you're dunking, then we're doing good. So it's when Rudy starts taking shots farther away, it's like, no, don't do that. And one of the things too, since Julius Randle's come back from injury, is he's leading the team in assists. And so, and at least this game, I haven't seen dribble, 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 post, dribble, dribble, dribble. Like he takes 2 dribbles and passes, and so it's like, oh, who? Like, if this is who you're going to be, like this is exciting. Crashing the boards, getting offensive rebounds, and just being able to find people when you're holding the ball at the top of the key, like that. Be a mini Jokic. That would be awesome. Like if we can get like slight production close to that from Julius Randle would be unbelievable. So. And Anthony Edwards has been assertive in the first quarter. I think they said like within the last 7 games, like they're leading the first quarter, and I think that just has been something that has put them at calm. It's put them at ease because they've had so many games where they've had to fight back from like 15, 20 down, and they make a game of it and have won a couple of them. But hey, let's get ahead in the game and kind of not coast, but like be comfortable with like staying within your game plan and not having to like change things up drastically. So it's definitely been fun to see them. I still think the 6th seed is their ceiling this year. If they can get that, sneak that away from the Warriors, that'd be awesome. I'd love for them to not have to worry about being in the play-in tournament. So, and their schedule is, I think, like the 2nd easiest going down the stretch in the NBA. So they're at least in position to make a charge and to hopefully do something because they have a solid team. This is going to be a fun playoff team. I think they can win one series if they get a good matchup. So, yeah, Timberwolves. Let's see how they're doing. I don't have their roster ups or their schedule up, so I don't know when their next game is. But I think they have at least with the schedule not being so tough, having played Oklahoma City like 3 games or 3 out of 4 games around the All-Star break. And we're done with some of these tougher teams now in the West and can kind of middle around with some of these Eastern Conference.
Although as you say that, their next game is March 12th against Denver, who is going to be after the loss to OKC tonight, is going to be coming off of a back-to-back against OKC as they play them again tomorrow. A little bit of a statement game by OKC tonight, but we'll see if the Nuggets can rebuttal. But yeah, and then they're going to have
a statement game going on right now over here, and I just looked at their record. The Pistons are blowing out the Blazers, and I saw that they are at 35 wins. So congrats, you got that one correct in our over-unders at the beginning of the year. I was dead wrong. This team looks good.
At least out east they do, but yeah, they're coming together. I mean, the statement I made was they have to be good this year because if they're not, then they're going on. I mean, what is it like? Cade Cunningham's 6th season in the league. You can't go on that many years of a rebuild and make 0 progress. I mean, last year they were hitting historic numbers in the loss column. It was a laughing stock, and that was a team that we expected to start to make that leap. And as we've talked about, adding veteran players for them has made a big difference. But why am I got my own thoughts about Schroeder these days, but wait, why am I going on this Magic tangent? I'm sorry,
the Pistons. They're in the 60 right now. Yeah, and they 7-3 in their last 10. Like they're 35-29 and out of the play-in tournament. So yeah, they're above the Hawks and the Magic and the Heat. So to me, like that's impressive. I have to give them their props for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, going back to what you were saying about Minnesota, because I think you really covered a lot of it and very passionately, might I add. That was some pretty good stuff. But
it's been a very impassioned night for me tonight. So,
but what you mentioned about Julius Randle is kind of the version of him that I expected to watch when he joined the T-Wolves. I kind of wanted him to be, a secondary scorer, but also a bit of a facilitator, and hopefully like a quick decision maker. When he was turning the offense slow as molasses, it's obviously that's not going to work for anybody involved. That's not how Minnesota, who is, overall, like, I mean, let's be honest, not like a super strong offensive team. A lot of what they do has to come from like their decision making and athleticism and transition and then, I mean, in large part, utilizing their defense to generate offense, which is something they weren't able to do early portion of the year. They're a team that has to be good defensively to be like a truly contending team, and they just weren't quite that. But recently, in this past 5 games, they're top 3 defensive rating team, and they've certainly made themselves climb up to the number 6 spot in that category this year, which I think they were down in the teens or so in like through the
I
first
I
third of
think
the season, give or take.
I think the injury for Randall kind of helped. I think getting traded, trying to jump right into this offense, trying to find the flow. I think having a break, kind of let's watch what this team does without me and how do they interact, how do they work, how does this core work together. And having him and Dante both out, it kind of forced those younger guys and then the original core of this team to kind of dictate the flow, and then adding those guys in, I think it was one of like, oh, I can see it now versus like trying to be on court and see what's going on. They actually had to sit back on the bench and could see it and hear from the coaches and stuff. So I think it was a well-timed injury. I think like with having 20 games, this is the perfect time to kind of catch fire and maybe not catch fire, but build on the success that you have, and hopefully it turns into positive momentum when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, yeah, and the other guy involved in the trade that you guys got, DiVincenzo, his 3-point shooting has picked up quite a bit, quite a bit. The more recent games, he's almost
Well,
at 40% of the season now,
and Jaden
which I think has been.
McDaniels, he's been coming up big, at least scoring point wise early in games. I think that was kind of an issue, was that he would always start off really cold. And I think for both of them, it's one of those, they just got to make some closer shots to get the confidence going, and then all of a sudden those threes will start falling.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you said it. The Jaden McDaniels is. It stinks that he's one of those guys where when he has the ball, you don't know what's going to happen when he throws it up. Like, is he going to make it? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But no, it's nice to see some of them falling lately. The T Wolves, as much as any team would hate to see them in the first round, I certainly will still have my qualms with them going forward. Primarily their offense. Their offense filters through Anthony Edwards, or he's the powerhouse of it. Maybe it should filter through Julius Randle if we can respect his decision making moving forward. But like you said, baby Jokic, right? But the issue I have with Edwards still, and I think will continue to be the issue I have with Anthony Edwards until, I mean, it's just his decision making with the ball. He seems to always want to attack, and then when he can't get to a spot, kick out. But I don't really see a level of complexity to his playmaking beyond that. Obviously, he can beat a lot of guys one-on-one, whether it's he's just bigger, stronger, faster than you, or having a hot shooting night, able to create space for himself. Which obviously he's been shooting the ball pretty well this season. But yeah, I mean, once he puts his head down, it's like he has blinders on. And as a guy who's like not going to give you 50 every night, he's a good scorer, or I should say great, not elite scorer. Maybe that would be like the differentiation I would want to make there. If he's the only guy that you can depend on, you're gonna see a lot of limitations with that. So certainly don't want to put the cart before the horse. I think that's going to be a motivating factor for Minnesota this offseason.
Hey, that's
Because I'm
why
sure
that's why I'm happy seeing Mike Conley shoot like 55% from three over the last like 5 or 6 games. So it's always you can rely on Edwards getting 25, I think, every night. But then outside of that, you have no idea what anybody. Naz Reid could have 2 points, or he could have 35, and so same with Alexander Walker could all of a sudden get hot from three and score 20 points. So it's hard to have that streakiness from everybody because there's no consistency. There's no like, all right, we maybe Randall. I think he might be the other piece to this if he's in there.
supposed to be. He was
Getting those
supposed to
points.
be
Yeah.
anyway.
And so that's the thing, is if we can get both of those guys going together, then it's okay if you have a couple guys pop off. And so but it's just, you got to have that consistency, and that is the troubling factor right now.
Yeah, and you did think, after that trade, like, well, if who they're shipping out is Karl Anthony Towns, and they were the best defense in the league last year, you're probably going to get a similar product this year. And then so I think that's really where they've fallen short. But they like you said, we still got about 20 games left. I don't know. I think Minnesota is actually down to 18 at this point, give or take. I'm not looking at the standings as we speak, but yeah, 18 games. So
Making me do math.
if they can, if they can stay on this trajectory to close the season, I mean, for sure, I can see that. Wait, hold on. Now I'm really thinking. I'm doing math as we're talking. No, they have 16 games left. Wow. Okay, they're one of the teams who have played more than a lot of other teams thus far. But anyway, sorry to get us off topic there. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the T-Wolves. I wouldn't consider them a Western Conference Finals contender just yet. I want to see them try to get out of the play-in race first. But if they end up in the play-in, I really, really like their chances.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't get to that, but yeah, I would still feel confident, and I think there's still a chance to win a series. If they win 2 games in the playoffs, I'd be happy. I think that's not counting the play-in.
You say that, but think about who they would have to win a playoff series against. It would be what? LA, Lakers, Nuggets, Grizzlies. Those are tough things.
That's why I said if we can get 2 to 3 games, push it to 6, 7. To me, it's always about entertainment value. It's no different than the Vikings. To me, it's if I can be entertained for an extended period of time, then I'm happy. If I have all of a sudden these expectations of like, oh, they got to win 2 series, like I know I'm going to be let down. So.
Spoken like a true T-Wolves fan, somebody who has experienced that beatdown year after year.
I just want 2 playoffs.
Let's not set the bar too high for ourselves. Anyway, so I think we're mentioning all hot teams of the West right now. Not a lot going on East, is there?
Well, I was in Cleveland, and like I mentioned to you, I was a little disappointed that the Cavs were out of town because my hotel was across the street from the stadium. Mm-hmm. So I was really hoping to be able to catch a game, either them or the Charge. I would have loved to go see the G League team as well. And so you've got the Cavs and the Celtics. Looks like they've already clinched a spot, and so what is that? I don't know what this. Yeah, clinch postseason. So there's a decent chance that I think it would be a semi-exciting Eastern Conference Finals. But to me, I'm looking at this play-in tournament. I was joking that the 26 and 38 Bulls are sitting in the play-in tournament, 12 games under 500, and to me, it's like we'll see what goes on there. What are your thoughts on the East?
Out east, I have been a little bit disappointed by the Knicks. As you know, I was super high on them after the moves that they made this offseason. They got Mitchell Robinson back, so he's going to be on like heavy minutes restriction though. They really are going to want to ramp him up slowly. Love to see Precious Achiuwa. What's that?
Remember when the Bucks were at the same spot as the 76ers, and we were all wondering what was going to happen with them, and now they sit 4th in the East. So I think that's a team that could do something.
They've leveled out nicely. Yeah, they've leveled out nicely, but I don't know. One thing that's unfortunate about the Bucks, obviously, the news of Bobby Portis. He's not the best player on that team, but he's an important player to that team. Yeah. I think if you calculate it out, he should be able to return for the playoffs, but that's a playoff Bobby Portis who hasn't played for 25 games. Gosh, what a weird situation. We don't have to go into it too much, but sometimes I do. I mean, a rule's a rule. Sometimes I do wish that some of the stuff could be judiciated a little bit different, maybe taken into context, maybe like modified punishments if the situation calls for it. But he didn't even appeal it, so clearly he thought that whatever the circumstances were, that it just wasn't going to work out for him.
I was going to say, what about you could give us a breakdown on a deep vein thrombosis that takes out the possible Defensive Player of the Year. I know this is back out west, but with Victor Wembanyama having to shut it down this season, and everybody's talking about the Spurs going for Cooper Flag and trying to tank. But what are your thoughts on Victor going down? Was it something they should have shut him down for the season? I know there's been some other players who have, like Chris Bosh and some other players have had this issue, and then their careers are almost over. So I guess that's one of the other big storylines that we didn't touch on.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing that you really need to know, and if you haven't heard it elsewhere thus far, is that the reason Victor Wembanyama can't play the rest of this year is because of the diagnosis he has. The minimum length of time, according to treatment guidelines, that he would have to be on blood thinners would be 3 months. So that basically knocks out the rest of his season. If it's a provoked DVT, deep vein thrombosis, a clot that exists in the deeper veins of the extremities or even of the thorax. I guess there is. Anyway, we don't have to get too thick into the weeds there. But this doesn't have to be a dissertation. Yeah, they call it his shoulder, which is weird. I know that the DVT was not in his shoulder joint. I know it was one of the veins
in there
traversing that region. So let's see. I think if I'm not mistaken, I'm spitballing off the top of my head here. Another player who has had the almost exact same situation happened to him is Brandon Ingram, he had the thoracic outlet syndrome, which provoked the DVT, which is something that, you can get corrected surgically through PT. There's a variety of methods to go about that. But, I wonder if Victor was dealing with a similar situation and they just didn't necessarily report that, or if maybe there was just some local trauma, from getting banged around in the post one game that led to some minor inflammation that then led to a DVT, which is an unlikely situation, but certainly possible for professional athletes, maybe especially, really tall guys who travel for long periods of time. Traveling is one of the risk factors. That's why I mentioned that one. Are you saying I'm rambling too much?
No,
Are you calling me a rambler?
Traveling. You said traveling. I was just.
Yeah. Sorry. Sure. So, but no. The thing about Chris Bosh is what people have alluded to, and I haven't read any interviews or any stories, seen any stories of him saying anything specific about his condition, but he, I believe, had an underlying hematologic condition that was causing a recurrence of DVTs, and so the decision was made, I'm sure, that he had to be on lifelong blood thinners, and therefore you can't play. Because if you get, say, hit in the head hard enough, or hit in the spleen hard enough, the chance of a life-threatening bleed it's a risk that, no team in their right mind is gonna take that liability and put a player out there on an anticoagulant like this. So that's really the big thing. But most likely, this was a provoked situation that he's gonna require treatment for a very short period of time. The good thing about this condition is it's not a musculoskeletal injury. He's probably training his ass off right now. He's doing whatever he was going to be doing otherwise in the off season, except having extra time to ramp up for next season. So it's not like you're going to get a lesser version of Victor Wembanyama. You're just going to get a more in shape guy.
Let's hope he's on the Caitlin Clark program. If you've seen her, she's got some pipes on her. So there's definitely been some work done. And yeah, I would love to see him getting a little bit bigger and being able to take some more of those impact. But yeah, watching the Spurs tonight, they're a totally different team without him. It's like you can only do so much with Vassell and Castle and Paul. So to me, that they're still competitive. Granted, they lost.
Don't forget about De'Aaron Fox.
Yes. Sorry. One of my.
But no, you're right. Once you hear Victor go down, it's like virtually any team in the NBA. Once you hear their best team, once you hear that their best player is out for the season, their playoff chances, especially a team that was on the outskirts already, trying to break their way back in, it's over. So yes, they should definitely just prepare for the draft at this point. Play competitive basketball, sure, but I'm sure that ownership, I'm sure management is going to be trying to shut people down appropriately as the rest of the season goes on. But yeah, hoping to see Victor back and playing at his best next season. Hopefully this is not something that's recurrent for him. And this will just be some freakish thing that happened to him when he was younger and thing of the past.
Yeah. So I guess The only other thing that I wanted to touch on was somebody who did something that's never been done before in the NBA to score 30 points, 20 rebounds, and have 20 assists. And just kind of, when he's talking to Scott Van Pelt about, it's just another game, got to get ready for the next one. Mr. Jokic has been unbelievable. I threw this out to you earlier, and I'm curious to get your take. Is it time to start comparing Jokic and MJ? Like, I understand the championships are different, but to be the best player for like an extended 4 to 5 year period and can't be stopped. Like, he's getting into that conversation. Yeah, he's a center, he's a different kind of a player, but his dominance and his ability to see the floor. And granted, yes, I know that's one game. He's not putting up 30, 20, 20 point numbers, but he's putting up better numbers than his MVP seasons, and it's looking like he could have a chance. Obviously, SGA and him are going back and forth, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on just Jokic continued dominance. I know he's one of your favorite players. Am I out of line to even mention him in the same sentence as MJ? He's got championships.
I guess if we're talking like top 10 player all time, that conversation, I don't think that's outlandish. If we're going to be looking at it, advanced stats like player efficiency rating and box score plus minus, and you'll see that he has eclipsed a lot of guys, including in some of them MJ. It's an interesting thought. I guess the only thing so Jokic obviously having one of the most dominant runs we've ever seen. I don't know when it's going to end. It seems like there's no end in sight, considering that he's putting together a season that beats his previous MVP seasons, which is just absolutely absurd to think. But I think the biggest mark against him is always going to be he's not an elite two-way player. So he is very much like he's having a Magic Johnson, decade right now, a Larry Bird decade. He's having an insane. I mean, you can even go back to like peak LeBron years. He's having a LeBron decade right now. He's having just like this outstanding, never been seen before, seemingly. Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like weird to use that as an example because that guy is still playing, and still doing his thing, but. I was referring to LeBron of like 10, 15 years ago.
Heat LeBron.
But yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, he's up there. We're gonna look back at this as one of the most dominant, whatever it ends up being, 5 to 10 year runs we've ever seen by a player. It's I don't actually know where he would sit today in terms of the MVP ladder. I do know that the straw poll results from the most recent one, which happened around, I think, just before the All-Star break, mid-February.
2-3 weeks ago, yeah.
Yeah, the voters put first of all the first place votes went to either Shea or Nikola, which I think is absolutely appropriate. But it was a 70-30 split in Shea's favor at that time. Which is is something that could swing wildly just by a handful of people changing their mind come time for the real thing. That said, though,
12 more games. I think that it's the team's success that I think being the best player on the best team is helpful to that argument for him, which makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's the typical mold. It's like he's the best player on the best team. He's the highest scoring player in the NBA on the best team. I mean, you can name a million people right off the top of your head. Like yeah, that's how people win MVPs. You average 32 a game, and your team is incredibly dominant. I just when it's like, what's the cutoff though? Because when you're simultaneously having a guy like Joker having this just like absurd season that blows out of the water almost things that he's done in the past, how do you not give this guy the nod? It bugs me. It bugs me because I wish it was so easy. I wish it was easy and we could, and like Jokic was just having like an average year by his standards. I'm using air quotes there. And and then Shea was the standout, kind of like the way that Embiid's MVP year went. It was like, yeah, there's Jokic is being Joker and what he's doing is elite, but Embiid is like just that little bit cut above of having an elite season that sort of outshines his just enough for you to say, sure, we'll give this guy the MVP this year. It's not the case though. Even in as outstanding as Shea has played. And that outstanding as OKC has looked with him on the court, it's really, really hard to give. Okay, so going back to your first point, what were the actual numbers that night? 31, 21, 22. Not only the first 30-20-20 game, but the first center to ever throw out 22 assists in a game. This guy, he was averaging a triple double to start the season, and it was like 15 games in, then 20 games in, then 25, maybe even 30 games in. You saw post after post of like Joker's doing this year, and this is in comparison to LeBron when he won an MVP. And everybody's picking a single stat and comparing it to an elite player when they had their most elite season, and seeing that Joker is beating all these guys in every single one of these major categories. You expect to see a bit of a downtrend in their numbers as the season goes on. Like they're gonna average, they're gonna veer a little bit towards the mean. I would expect, regardless of how good of a season statistically Jokic was having through like 20 games, I expect him to be 27 points a game, 12 rebounds a game, about 8.9 assists a game, right? That's what we expect a Joker year to be. He is still averaging a triple double. He even dipped below the triple double and has climbed back into it.
Yeah, he's at 28.8. Yeah, 28.8 points, 12.9 rebounds, and 10.5 assists, and he's still shooting 43% from three. Like, it was ridiculous when he was shooting 50% there for like the first 2 months, and that's just dipped a little bit. He's still that's 7 percentage points higher than last year, and it's easily the best by 4 points off of any year that he's played. So, and it's funny because like the highlight reel packages I see is him these bombing threes away from the side corner and deep three from like Steph range, and it's like this is a 7-foot center that's just going bananas, and it's unbelievable.
Yeah, his consistency from deep has definitely stood out. Like you said, it's again, that's a number that's veered towards the average, towards the mean for him a little bit, but he's still doing it consistently at a better rate than what he did in previous seasons. And then, I mean, just not only that, but he is in top 3 in the league, not just having the triple double, but top 3 in scoring, in points per game, rebounds per game, and assists per game. And he's top 5 in steals per game. I'm not looking at stats right now, but I'm pretty sure that's still true. Let's see. Hold on.
1.8 steals per game.
Yeah.
81% from the line. And he's averaging 4.5 threes per game at that 43% clip. So, and that's about a shot and a half more than what he's ever done before too. So he's shooting more, making more, and and like you said, if he's top 3 in these like point guard metrics, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, so he's leading the league in offensive rating still at 125.9, and it's not even close compared to the next person. And the drop off for that, Darius Garland at 124, which is incredible, and then after that, it's 122, 121 across the board for the rest of the good players on good teams. So that's a huge gap there. You look at other like advanced all-encompassing metrics like on NBA.com, the player impact estimate. Obviously, he's leading in that as well. One thing that stood out to me, which I thought was absolutely absurd, is he's 7th in the league this year in true shooting percentage. If you are looking at the top 10 on this list, he is the only player in true shooting percentage who is averaging over 20 points a game on that list. And obviously he's 3rd in scoring currently. So true shooting percentage, 66.4%. That's an absolutely absurd number in and of itself, not to mention him not being just like a rim running center who's going to get like nothing but high percentage shots or take high percentage shots. So he's if you guys haven't if you guys haven't picked up on the number one scorer on his team, is the number one offensive player on his team. That just doesn't happen for number one offensive options. It's not very often. And so trying to sort of like in my mind, like how does this guy, let's say we're in the same exact situation 20 games from now at season close, where OKC is either number one, number two in overall standings across the league. Just, they finished the season with 66 wins, whatever it's going to be. And then here we have, the Nuggets crawling into third as a very promising playoff team, but not one of these elite teams. Like, what is it going to take for us to say, no, we're not going to let him win the MVP this year for the fourth time because we have to give it to Shea, for whatever reason. It's just that, like, watching. So here, with I can obviously I'm getting all giddy about this one, but one thing that really stands out to me is so the on-offs for Jokic and Shea are absolutely incredible. I mean, it's going to be some stark numbers here, but the differential on-off differential with Joker on the court this year is 23.6 points, and for Shea is 12 points even. Let me say that again: 23.6 points with Joker on versus off the court for for the Denver Nuggets. Both of those are spectacular numbers. One obviously is a lot bigger than the other. I think
it's double.
I think the big thing is that if you look at net rating for the Oklahoma City Thunder overall, it's 12.8. Okay. And then if you look at overall net rating for, and I know we're using two different stats here, but similar in comparison. If you're looking at overall net rating for the Nuggets here, it's 4.7. So Oklahoma City Thunder, regardless of whether or not Shea is on the court, is per 100 possessions is outscoring teams by at least 12 points per game. Versus the Nuggets, a formidable 4.7 net rating, but with a 23.6 on off points for Joker. I mean, just like the amount that he has to elevate that team for them to reach like high level competency.
But he's elevating that team, isn't he? Like, how is Westbrook playing? That's one of the things I think I've been curious to know is how have those two been merging since I haven't watched as much as I should, and I usually only see the highlights. Is Westbrook getting better? Is he integrating with this? I see a lot of Michael Porter Jr. dunks and highlights from him just because he's around the rim and usually back cutting on people too. But is this team, obviously they drop when Joker goes off the floor, but they still have some quality players on the team. So I guess the question to you is, can the Nuggets make a Western Conference final run?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, honestly, the number two team I would predict to make the Western Conference Finals would be the Nuggets behind OKC. I mean, a lot of that is recency bias with their championship run, and giving them the edge over this sea of teams that they're existing in right now, who are all quite good teams, or either for the entirety of the season or making a late run like the Lakers are, but. Going back to the Westbrook thing, I'm glad you brought that up. So, stylistically, what you'll see with both Westbrook and Joker on the court, and I think what makes it work is because you think like, okay, like I guess Joker's a little bit of a floor spacer, but he doesn't really he's not like Karl Anthony Towns where he can just spend the whole game out on the 3-point arc, right? That's not how the Nuggets win games. With Joker on the court. But what you see is, what Jokic wants to do is catch the ball as close to the basket as possible, and wherever he does catch the ball, get to the basket as close as possible, while generally still moving the ball during that. He likes to get the ball deep, and Westbrook is an incredible downhill player. Now, once he's once that train is moving at full speed, you don't know what the hell is going to happen with the ball, and like where it's going to end up, whether it's going to end up in the hoop, near the hoop, in the stands. We don't fucking know. But sorry, I getting excited there. Are we owned by Disney? Maybe we could bleep that out later. But 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 what he realized is that, like, if I get close enough to the hoop, I'm going to attract some attention, and then I can just dump it off to this guy who's going to give me an assist almost every single time. And that's exactly what he's doing. He is better than anybody else. I think Jokic has played alongside. He's getting close to the hoop, getting him the ball close to the hoop. Thereafter, whether or not he has the shot, he's just like, here, I'm going to dump it off to this guy. Sometimes Westbrook even gets the ball back somehow in the dunker spot. Like he didn't move and people forgot about him, and then he gets the bucket and Joker gets the assist. But a lot of times he's just getting assists from Jokic doing his thing. I mean, when I was watching, I was watching the OKC game earlier today, which this is going to throw off obviously what I'm saying here, because OKC did have a pretty convincing win against the Nuggets today, and Shea dropped 40, and Jokic had an uncharacteristically inefficient mid-20 something game, and failed to get his triple-double by one assist. But no, I mean, all he did was wait for a lack of a switch to happen, his guy to fall asleep, and he just cuts to the basket. And Russ knows exactly where to put that ball. Jokic, who has some of the best hands, if not the best hands in the league, was just able to catch it on the run and take one lumbering step towards the hoop and put it in. With the super soft touch that he has around the rim. But, I feel like watching him with Westbrook has sort of allowed you to see, like, he has revived this player, this Westbrook guy who we think playing next to LeBron, right? Like freaking LeBron James. You thought, like, oh no, it was so clunky there with these two like high level playmakers. Like, how is it going to be any different with Jokic and the Nuggets? But that's what he does. He really raises the floor on who he plays with, and we've watched him do it with Westbrook. We have watched the Nuggets, who are currently in third place and have stayed in the top half of the standings throughout the entirety of the season. We've watched them weather the storm of Jamal Murray, play through a dud of a season.
Yeah.
Last year, through the Olympics, and then through the first portion of this year, he's now finally starting to look like he's coming into form and looking like the Jamal Murray the playoff Jamal that we all know and love. But we have watched him survive the storm or weather this storm. I'm calling it a storm because it's not just Murray. It's MPJ has also been quite cold this season. A lot of the inconsistency of his game are really starting to stand out this year, which is unfortunate. But
that's funny because I feel like I've only seen him make shots at the hoop. I rare do I see any highlights or footage of him making a jump shot. It's usually just a dunk or a transition basket.
No, a 6'10" jump shooters is who they signed up for, and they don't always get that every night these days. No. But then on top of it, Aaron Gordon has been in and out of the lineup recently with minor injuries. I believe he had a calf injury in the first quarter today, and after that, you kind of saw a drop off in the Nuggets' performance because, I mean, I stand by it. The Nuggets, the number 2 most important player on the court for them is Aaron Gordon. In most situations, yeah. I would say, because he's kind of like the antimatter to Jokic's giant mass of matter. He kind of fills in the gaps for him, and he's a really good guy for him to play alongside. And they just I think they were going zone against OKC today, which Shea was just eating up whoever was on in front of him, and then so he was getting right in the middle of the zone, and then he could just get to a shot. And we all seen Joker try to play defense. He's not going to take that step away from his potential rebound. He's going to be I'm going to let you shoot, but like I'm going to be the box out guy, and I will not let an offensive rebound slide by me. That's kind of his role on defense for the most part. So watching Aaron Gordon in and out of the lineup, and yet the Nuggets have been this sturdy contender. They have not slipped, and I don't anticipate that they will. Assuming they stay healthy for the rest of the season. Hopefully, Aaron Gordon comes back all right before the end of the year. But so watching him do what he's doing with this, I don't want to say like it's not like he has a bad cast around him, but sort of this like shaky cast around him on a
I've seen a lot of
squad.
Braun. I've seen a lot of Christian Braun shots. I feel like he's the
Well,
only other Nugget that I see.
I'm so glad you brought that up too, because Christian Braun, again, talk about raising the floor of players around you. I mean, granted, Christian Braun has made a leap this year. He's been looking fantastic. A lot of credit to Denver for betting on him replacing uh, KCP. I think he's done that quite well. He's developed really really good chemistry with Joker, and he's typically guarding the best perimeter player that any team that they face, that they're facing that night. So his role is huge for them, and he's filling in
And he
those
stayed
shoes
healthy.
very very well.
I feel like he's stayed healthy this year. He might have had an injury or two. I feel like every time I've gone and seen a highlight or something shows up on social, like he's in the game. Like, and I think that's obviously if you have injuries and stuff, you need a consistency to go with Joker because he's going to be there, and that I think that's not that he's the reason that they're still in that 3 spot, but I think he's played a big part this season just to be, like you said, he kind of filled the role and has been playing it well.
Yeah, no, he's. I mean, Christian Braun has definitely reaped a lot of benefits from playing a lot alongside Jokic, and yeah, I mean, he's looked to be a sturdy presence in that role for sure. But just talking about weathering the storm, I haven't even finished what the storm includes. He's also had to weather a franchise that favors. Granted, again, I'm giving them their flowers. I'm giving them their credit for not betting on KCP, who's had a bit of an off year, who's getting older, and maybe we've seen the best of his run as a high level role player, but they've he plays for a franchise who is favoring player development coming off of a championship run. You don't really see that happen too often, and when you do, it tends to not end so well. Golden State is another recent example of a team who's kind of done that. They say, well, we got these young guys. Let's see if we can build back up this like high level, high energy team around these these high talent players. And it's just a weird thing to do for a guy who's amidst a million MVP seasons right now, as Jokic is. And so a lot that he's had to play with, in order to, and yet this team has just continued to excel, is just, I mean, most valuable player. I mean, that's what we're voting on, right? It's not just like best player on the best team or best scorer on the best team. I mean, when OKC is doing something like what they're doing this year, just having like historical defensive and net ratings, it's really hard to not just so badly, just like we just want to give it to Shea and just call it a day. Like this is the easiest thing, right? This is the easy thing to do. But the hard decision, I think, is like it's going to remain in front of us, and especially for voters by the end of the season, Jokic is going to just still be this. I mean, again, assuming all goes well for the rest of the season, he's just going to be this guy that is undeniably has the greatest impact for his team, and for a good team at that. That is as good as they are because of him. So I don't know. I mean, there's a really good counter argument out there, but I just have to give him the nod. I can't ignore what's happening right now. Now that said, Shea has decided just recently that his favorite number is 50, and he decided to just start racking up 50-point games for the first time in his career, in the past month and a half, and yes, OKC looked pretty good against the Nuggets. Jokic, a lot of those shots were coming up flat. I think they were rarely wearing them out. Like I said, they match up again tomorrow. What a hell of a back to back! But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe they have a rebuttal in them. I'm excited to watch that game tomorrow as well, which is on NBA TV, so it won't be too hard to watch.
Nice. All right. Well, we probably should get back to our families. Pistons just sneak away with the win. They wanted to give that one away. And this is the first time I have seen Luke Walton. Is he the coach of the Pistons or assistant coach? He's an assistant coach. It's just the first time I've seen him and came up there. Sorry, random thought. Just was wondering what happened to him. And you're frozen. So this is great. Hopefully you'll come back on here in a second. But if not, this is a great way to end the show. So I hope everybody make sure you go follow us on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. We want to make sure that we hear from you guys, and we will get some clips going. But we hope you guys enjoy your basketball, and we will talk to you guys later. This is the Bucket Bros. Say bye, Bobby. See ya.